Good morning and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection Series. We've got an updated series that we've been running this month called Aging in the 21st Century, What Caregivers Need to Know Now. And we've talked about how COVID-19 changed our view on long-term care facilities, what caregivers and seniors need to know to stay in place. That was really interesting. I saw my notes from that. That was great. And today we're going to talk about what caregivers and seniors need to look for in a long-term care facility. And we have our wonderful guest speakers, Lucy and Elliot, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar is a public health professional with 2 decades of experience in supporting the health of the public through academic work, research, and service. He has led healthy aging programs for seniors and for caregivers in Canada, in Florida, and virtually, I guess that means around the world. And his research is focused on the complexity of issues related to aging and caregiving. Dr. Sklar is an associate professor of healthcare sciences at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He's also recently published research in the American Journal of Occupational Therapy, the Journal of Applied Gerontology, and the Journal of Social Services research on themes related to our program. And he's a full-time professor. Otherwise, he's doing nothing. And Lucy Barylak has a master's degree in social work from McGill University. She is presently working as a consultant for a health network in Montreal, Canada. She's been involved in various research projects and has published numerous articles related to caregiving issues. She has lectured at several universities and colleges on innovative approaches to caregiving and presents annually at national and international conferences. Lucy is also a consultant for private industry in the United States, including her work with the WellMed Charitable Foundation and clinics in Texas. And on a personal note, Lucy would like you to know that she was a caregiver for her mother for about 10 years. And with that, Lucy and Elliot, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 3rd session. I hope everybody is well. You know, our session today focuses on a very important topic because as much as it is our desire to age in place as long as we can, sometimes there comes a point where we need more care for ourselves or for those for whom we are providing care. So let's be honest, very few people dream of living out their golden years in a nursing home. The very idea sparks dread in many people. In 2020, AARP Caregiving in America report, most Americans said that they wanted to age at home, 76% of those 50 and older. I imagine that percentage is even higher since COVID. I think it's important for us to begin by exploring some of those reasons why people hope to avoid long-term care. So for those of you who are participating with us today, I really would like to hear what are some of your reasons that you would want to avoid long-term care, either for yourself or for a loved one. So love to hear what you have to say.
So folks, respond to Lucy by either pressing *6 if you're on the phone, or you can use the chat feature or unmute yourself, or you can, what's the other one? use the hand up. Anybody? Go on. Darlene?
Yes, I was going to say cost. That comes to my mind, first of all, the cost.
That's a very, very good point. For sure, the cost plays a big role in everything we do in our lives, doesn't it? I saw something on the chat, but I missed it.
Yes, Patsy said familiarity with home and the ability to control who works with family.
That's a very, very good point, for sure. So there are many reasons, different reasons why, you know, the realities is that as many people live longer, they will require more care for complex and chronic health conditions. You know, the number of Americans aged 85 and older is expected to top 19 million by 2050. So there comes a point for many caregivers in which difficult decisions need to be made about long-term care placement, and our program today provides a forum to discuss what caregivers need to consider as well as to discuss your concerns. And we will, and Elliot will review a lot, and the whole cost issue will come into play as well. So thank you for that, Darlene.
Absolutely. So I think it's important that we address why people would want to avoid long-term care in the context of our discussion today. And some of the reasons that we've heard from you participating certainly play into that. What I recognize is I think most people don't want to consider long-term care because it's a reflection of their own view of declining health and mortality. That certainly is true for me. And that's a very heavy thing to deal with. It could also be the recognition of declining health of a loved one. I have a cousin who's 91, and we've had conversations about facilities nearby. It's not an easy conversation to have. It might also mean a departure from the community and friends that you've known a long time, as one of our participants shared. I think moving under good circumstances is extremely stressful. So when people consider long-term care, it's a much more difficult and stressful move. It's also really important, I think, to acknowledge those feelings and concerns so that information about long-term care can be processed a bit more objectively. And also that decision-making then becomes an objective process. And we're going to talk a bit about that today. I think also for some people, the decision does come down to cost, as we've heard, and advocacy, which we'll talk also about today. And we'd like to encourage people, certainly to ask your doctor medical questions. We advise people to speak with financial advisors and people at their local AAA to best understand your specific options and circumstances.
Those are all important tips for sure, and we're going to elaborate a little bit more. Deciding to move your loved one into a nursing home or assisted living facility can be a difficult decision, riddled with conflicting feelings of guilt, even relief, anxiety, and grief. However, recognizing the signs that it's time for a higher level of care than you can provide at home is key to the health of the quality of life of your loved one, and actually the quality of life for yourself as well. It's so hard to pinpoint an exact time as to when a loved one might be ready for a placement. It's important to keep an eye out for some signs that the care that your loved one's care needs to be beyond the ability of what you're able to really do. So here are some very interesting tips. So let's look at them. If you have to live a loved one and hurt yourself, that's something you should be doing. Your loved one's disability loss has progressed to the point that safety is endangered. Your loved one wanders and gets lost. Challenges with incontinence is usually a big one, where caregivers say, this is it, I can't continue. Other major responsibilities are being neglected to the point of creating problems for you or your family. You're experiencing chronic caregiver burnout and decline health. You're really not taking care of yourself. Your personal relationships are suffering. You can't meet all your loved one's need. The other thing is your loved one may become verbally, physically, or sexually aggressive, and you need to protect yourself, and you need to protect them as well. So remember, it's okay to feel sadness, grief, and even stress about moving your loved one into an assisted living. But keep in mind, it's what is best for their health and their happiness as well as yours. So here I go again. I want to hear your opinion. It's important. If anyone participating today considering long-term care because of any of these challenges or others that you may want to share, maybe we missed a couple. So the lines are open.
Please unmute your phone or unmute yourself. Use the chat room, wave your hand. I've got a little program here. I can see all of that stuff. There's such a stigma with long-term care too. I think that is additional to all of those things. It's kind of like, it's not just the cost, because there are programs to help, though often they don't have the same quality of care.
For sure.
But yeah, but it's that I'm going to place somebody and I've been taking care of them for 10 years. What will my friends think? What will my family think?
Exactly. All these things come into play for sure. But I do want to say something very quickly. With all my years of experience working with caregivers, it's interesting that for some people, going into a long-term care setting does enhance their quality of life. They're not as isolated as when they're being taken care of by one person or two people. There's a more socialization. They are with other people. There's music. There's activities that at home cannot provide. So it's a balancing act. It's not everything. It's an individual decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe one thing that isn't really as highlighted on this list as it ought to be is for caregivers to take a look at their own health, apart from the health of their care recipient. Because many caregivers, as we know, experience a decline in health as caregiving responsibilities mount. And when a care recipient's health deteriorates or declines, that can be, very impactful on the person receiving care as well. So I think that's an important consideration as well. Does anyone have any
yourself
other?
first.
Well, sometimes we have to, especially if others are relying upon us to be able to do things like activities of daily living that require a certain level of physical fortitude and mental fortitude as well.
Right.
Any last comments or questions from anyone? It's a good question you asked, Lucy.
Just, unmute your phone or unmute your Zoom. Love to hear from you.
It's a really tough thing for a lot of people to look at.
For sure.
Even
If
to think
anything,
about it.
yeah, absolutely. If anything comes up, feel free to enter it in the chat box and we'll move ahead then. Evelyn, you had talked about stigma, and I think there's a lot of stigma to placing someone, but there's also a lot of stigma about the job being done within nursing home facilities. Looking at some current public opinion data, many people are certainly concerned about cost of care, but also quality of care. And this was really the focus of a recent Kaiser Family Foundation report. Now, in his State of the Union address, President Biden had talked about improving care for residents at nursing homes, assisted living, and other long-term care. But the latest poll finds that nearly half of adults and 51% of adults 50 and older worry about being able to afford long-term care, like nursing home care, just as we heard. And less than half rate the quality and cost of care at this country's nursing homes positively. So back to that stigma, Evelyn. And really, when people are polled, it's not like they have all the data accessible to them to make these decisions. It's really based upon perception. And it's important that we keep that in mind. But perception is reality for many people. I think for all of us to some degree. The majority of adults say that our nursing homes and assisted living facilities are doing a bad job of maintaining adequate staffing levels. This we know to be true based upon data that we shared in our previous sessions during this series, but also that they fail to offer affordable care or provide high quality care to residents. Now, I don't know if the people who responded actually had loved ones in long-term care, which is another thing to think about. So I'm curious if anyone participating today does have someone in long-term care, or even if you don't, what are your perceptions or opinions?
Press *6 to unmute your phone or unmute yourself, whatever you need to do on Zoom. Got a quiet group today, Elliot.
That's okay.
Well, I think if I may, I think that due to the pandemic, it's kind of left a bad scar on long-term care facilities because of, unfortunately, what took place and how it was managed. But I'm hoping that there were a lot of lessons learned, and I'm hoping that a lot of the issues that arose from the pandemic and the way people were treated is changing, but it takes time. And the most important thing is that there isn't sufficient staff, as we talked last time, Elliot, and so these are issues that people are still thinking about. So there's sort of a black scar there.
The world
Yeah.
needs more caregivers.
And if you think about it, the pandemic is not quite over as much as we want to think that it is. And I think that the staffing shortage that we're seeing in nursing homes is a reflection of that that ongoing pandemic in a way. So one of our participants earlier had talked about paying for care. And I think this is one of the most pressing concerns that people have. And, as you introduced, Evelyn, our session today certainly addresses what caregivers and seniors need to look for in order to make a decision on what facility is right for them. Now, there are so many choices and options. It's important to consider, though, the costs and insurance options. Some people have long-term care insurance policies, but most people do not. And there are so many different opinions and information out there. I included this graphic from Regions Bank about the monthly average rate of long-term care costs, with nursing home care coming in at about $6,000 and assisted living facilities coming in at about $3,600. But I don't really believe that that's actually very reflective of all places across the country. And that's why I say it's so important, that we look locally and that we reach out to our regional resources, which we'll share with you. In my experience, this is a big underestimate. We also know that some assisted living facilities can be double what the cost of nursing home care might be for different reasons. So it's really important to weigh all of the options, and that also includes looking to see if you are eligible to have in-home care at all. So it's hard for us to go into all of the different funding options and financing options today during our session, but I think it's really important that people recognize that for people being placed in nursing home care, the majority of those people would be covered under Medicaid if you're not paying out of pocket. And I want to talk more about Medicaid because it is the entitlement that covers long-term care, but only for those who qualify financially. And it's a bit of a process and can take some strategy, actually. So the majority of people, as I said, who are in long-term nursing home care do use Medicaid. And that's because some estimates say that the average daily cost of someone in a nursing home exceeds $400 a day. And frankly, very few families can afford to pay that out of pocket. Most can't. Now, in fact, Medicaid, here's part of the problem, doesn't pay that either. In fact, they don't even pay about half of that. They pay less than $200 a day if the cost is on average about $400 a day. So, I think that's in part too why long-term care facilities, nursing facilities especially, are struggling so much right now and struggling to find the level of care that they need in terms of staffing. So people trying to get loved ones into Medicaid eligible nursing homes due to the nuances of Medicaid acceptance and the complexities of nursing home law make it not a simple nor a fast process. There are a number of different issues that combine to make it even more challenging. And we discussed, I believe last week it was, that there's a limited availability of Medicaid beds in nursing homes. And the fact that nursing homes also will not accept a new resident unless they have a way to pay for their care. And the nuance here is that Medicaid will not accept the applicant until they've been admitted into a nursing home. And this is why it's so important that you work with your local AAA to get a case manager, a caseworker working with you to help you in this process. Nursing homes have lost about 240,000 caregivers, roughly 15% of its workforce since the pandemic began. This is really worse than any other sector in healthcare, and many nursing homes, as a result, have reduced new admissions. We heard this from a participant who had shared that they have, I think, if it were 50 nursing home beds, that only 20 were being made available for new admissions right now. So it certainly is a challenge. We have a little bit of a decision tree here for you. And of course, we'll always provide a copy of our slides, but I'm going to outline some very basic steps. And I hope that the visual helps for those who are able to see it on Zoom today. And I'll outline them verbally as well. So the National Council on Aging has some wonderful and comprehensive resources that go into much more detail than we can in our time today. And we'll provide those resources as well. There is a link at the bottom of our screen. They really provide comprehensive resources, and I recommend taking a look at their website if you can. As I mentioned, your local AAA, I think, should be your first point of contact in your community. It's really important to work with their professionals who can help you as well in making decisions and advising on facilities within your local community and state. Now, the National Council on Aging provides these 4 pieces of advice on how to get into a Medicaid nursing home. And the first is to create a list of nursing homes in your area that accept Medicaid. And there's a link that we'll be sharing with our resources today that gives you that list that you can go through. The second step would be to contact admissions at each of those nursing homes on your list and to ask if they're accepting Medicaid pending clients. So that will help you narrow down your list. And then if they do accept Medicaid pending, ask the admissions if they have any available Medicaid beds. As I mentioned before, a nursing home might have, say, 100 beds, but only 50 of them, as an example, might be allocated to Medicaid beneficiaries. So if no bed is available, ask if you can be placed on a waiting list. Wait lists at these facilities do not require any financial commitment. So families should try to be put on as many wait lists as they can find acceptable nursing homes. I think that's a really good piece of advice. Think of them as lotto tickets. If you haven't already, certainly be sure to apply for Medicaid, but only if you are certain that you will be approved. Now, this takes a little bit of research, and that's why we have a Medicaid pre-screen that we will also make available in our resources. It's a free pre-screening tool, again, made available through the National Council on Aging. I really think one of the most important things is doing research early on so that you know what your options are. You can look up and see if there are any complaints that have been filed against any of these facilities, how people rate them online. You can look on Yelp, you can look on Google. I think the worst thing is when caregivers find themselves in a pickle because of whatever circumstance and are not prepared on how to move forward with placement options or know which ones exist. Another issue I have experienced recently is that because people have relocated during the pandemic, they don't know what resources and facilities are in their local communities. I have a former colleague who's participated in our program and relocated from Florida to Maryland and found herself in a position with her mom who had advanced Alzheimer's and had to place her, and really didn't know at all what was around in the community to support her in this process. So she got amazing assistance from her local AAA, and that's why I recommend reaching out to them as your first stop. So I know that I have shared so much information right now. Does anyone have any questions or any comments?
Please press *6 if you're on the phone, or unmute yourself if you're on Zoom, put your hand up or use chat. We'd really love to hear your questions, your comments, any experience you've had. If you don't mind, Elliot, I would just add that Medicaid is a state program, state to state program, and some of them have different rules, and that There are some states, not all states, have something called spousal impoverishment rules. And one of the things that is different is that they look at income for the person who's going to stay at home and what it's going to cost to put somebody in a nursing home. And it really protects the person, the spouse, who's going to stay at home and gives them enough to live on. So check, that's one of the reasons he keeps saying, go to your local area agency on aging, is because they know the local rules and the state rules. So that's an important piece.
Yes, and that's why I mentioned strategy, because sometimes you have to be strategic about how you approach the process and how you allocate your resources.
And your time and your energy.
Of course, but it's very useful energy and time, in my opinion, because it's part of preparedness, and
Right.
it eliminates a huge stress if you're in a bind, as I mentioned. I know many people who've had a loved one who has fallen and broken something and then needed to be placed short term, and even that was very stressful. So better to know what exists in your community.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so that's a lot of information to take in, but I think you really, really said it very well. So let's say you've gone through all that and you're while waiting for a placement, okay, what should you be doing? I really think it's so important to prioritize what you can and cannot do. And so what I mean by that, maybe you have to limit. I mean, maybe your loved one was getting a shower every day. So do they have to get a shower every day if it's difficult for you? A sponge bath can do. What does the care recipient need most? Work again with the AARP regarding what in-home services might be available. Respite is so important. Maybe you can consider a day center if the person is able to go there. And it's so important to advocate for what you need help with, and to find ways to cope and manage stress. We talk a lot about that. About exercise, eating well, taking big breaths, doing something for yourself. It's not an easy time when you're waiting, but it is important that you don't need to do this alone. So if you can get a worker at the AAA to see how the area agency on aging, to connect with them, to be able to have support with them. There's telehealth for counseling as well. So these are all the things that you're and I would advise you to just jot them down, because when you write things down, they become visible. And what I mean by that, prioritize what you can and cannot do. There's nothing wrong with asking a very good friend or a family member to help out, even for an hour, so that they can come in and spend time with the person you're caring for, and you could either go for a walk, even go into your bedroom, take a little rest. These are all the things that you should be thinking about, because it might take a little bit more time than but you need to preserve your own health. You need to take care of yourself. So I'm just emphasizing that, and I hope that people are really going to be able to look at that and balance it off. It's not only about the care receiver, it's about you. We want to keep you, the caregiver, healthy, physically and mentally, until the process comes to be.
Well said. And I would, really also emphasize asking what in-home services are available to you in your local community. We're seeing an expansion of these services being covered. Also telehealth, because it is so expensive to place someone into nursing home care, and there are such limited number of beds. In-home services are being expanded in many communities. There are also nonprofit groups that you might not even be aware of. So my experience has been the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you be that squeaky wheel. Now, the other thing is, I think as challenging as it is to get someone into a nursing home, it can be equally as difficult to place someone in a private living facility if they have the means to do so. The emotional component is the same. Placement, I think, can be an acknowledgement of a person's declining health, as I had said earlier. And that can be very difficult if we're not quite ready to recognize or acknowledge that. So please take advantage of mental health services that are available, including the wonderful hotline that we have that's new this year since July 1st, and that's 811. And you can call and speak with a crisis counselor 24/7. It's completely private, free, anonymous. Such an amazing, amazing service right now. So last but not least here, I think, talking about things we don't really want to acknowledge or consider, it's really important to find out about a facility's emergency preparedness plans. Find out if they have a generator in case of a power outage. What do they do if someone tests positive for the flu or for COVID? Ask about boosters and how residents have received them, how that's been coordinated. If there is a hurricane, for example, where you live, what do they do then? Is the glass impact resistant? Is there a safe room that people are moved into? Is the place impact resistant as a whole, where people can shelter in place? This is so important. In the wake of Hurricane Ian, and certainly the winter storm that we were talking about in Texas a few years ago, our COVID pandemic, all of these events require us to broaden our thinking. You might not find that a facility checks off all of the boxes in terms of preparedness, but then it gives you a better sense of the things that you might need to do to protect and prevent things from happening to your loved one. So for example, I have heard of facilities where there has not been a coordinated COVID booster effort. You can consider asking, your local pharmacy if they do house calls. In many communities, that is the case. I mentioned I have a family member who lives nearby who's 91, and the health department comes out to her home and administers her flu and her COVID vaccine to her there. So that is something that does exist in many communities. If there's a power outage and there isn't a generator, for example, you could consider leaving a battery operated or solar lantern for your loved one. These are just things that I think are really important. I spent part of my morning today working with caregivers in Lee County, Florida, where Hurricane Ian hit, and they're in long-term motels with their care recipients. Lee County has the oldest population in Florida. So it's a very important issue for those who live in areas that have winter storms or areas where there are hurricanes or tornadoes. So please think about these things. They're things that we need to think about now. And Lucy, I want to ask you, what are some of the main things that caregivers should be looking for, or questions they should be asking when they're exploring long-term care facilities?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, first and foremost, that it's a difficult thing to consider. However, we can't all offer full-time in-home care, and nursing homes or care homes can really be the best option when someone needs 24 high-quality care. So you got to really deal with that. The decision will be much easier if you give yourself time to research the nursing home that will be best meet the needs of the individual and family for long care, or yourself. During this time, the idea of a nursing home placement at a skilled nursing facility can be gradually accepted so that everyone can adjust to it properly. Unfortunately, most people don't get much time to make this decision. There's often a rapid change in the individual's mental or physical health that requires immediate placement. Other times, the placement begins when the individual needs to stay in a nursing home while they recover from surgery, as Elliot said. So if your loved one can still make choices or discuss their wishes clearly, it's really important that you acknowledge their opinion and act accordingly. However, if an impairment has caused this level of thought to be difficult for your loved one, you need to be ready to make decisions on their behalf. But please keep in mind, if they still can make decisions for themselves, ask them what they would prefer. Make the final decision on nursing home care placement while, coming to, there'll be a lot of challenges, there's no doubt. It is an emotional time, and options may differ greatly between the individual requiring care, yourself, and other family members will play a big part in this. A professional such as a social worker or a doctor can be very helpful in this situation. As Elliot said, you can call 211 for help, for resources, to contact your local area agency on aging to support you in this process. I would highly recommend that. So some of the things that you should be or would like to look into, this is going to be your loved one's last place. That's their home, so you want to make sure that a lot of the things that they would enjoy and they want to do, that they could still continue doing that. So, it's, for some people, it's important to make sure that there is stimulating activities that your loved one could participate in. I'll talk more about food. Food is a major issue, obviously, that, to be able to go and have a taste of the food, see what it's like. Ask questions. Can you bring things in? Can you bring cooked food inside? The safety, the comfort. Are the rooms air conditioned or other areas air conditioned? Are there separate bathrooms? How does the staff manage difficult behaviors? I'll talk more about staffing in a little while. And as Elliot said, instead of, not just hurricanes, but how do they manage safety issues in the place? Let's say there's another resident who's a wanderer and comes into your loved one's room, could be screaming, yelling. How do they deal with that? So if possible, make sure your loved one, take into consideration your loved one's culture, their background, their religion, how important all these issues are to them, the diversity, sexual diversity. It's very important that they fit into a place that they feel respected and that they feel that it's as much of home as it can be. So additionally, whether you are looking for a nursing home for your loved one or for yourself, there are some other key factors to think about in helping you make that decision. And I believe that location and size is really important. So when you're considering, location is one of the most important factors to consider. If you're the one needing care, you will want to be close to your family as possible. And if you're looking for your loved one, you want a place that you could visit easily and not have to take 3 or 4 buses or drive. The size of the nursing home is also extremely important. It should be based on the unique personality and preference of the person that needs care. For example, you can ask yourself or your loved one questions like these. Is this, think about it. Is this person more introverted and quiet or social and outgoing? Would a place with a lot of other people around provide a better environment for this person? Are there places where he or she or they can go outside and walk around? If so, are these places easily accessible and safe? Does the facility have enough room to offer quiet areas and activity spaces so that the resident can decide what they want to do at any given time? The other thing is services. Even though long-term they all have services, different nursing homes offer many different services and healthcare. So it is crucial to find out which ones are provided by the homes you're considering. While some services are essential for meeting the specific needs of the resident, others are just as important for improving their quality of life. For example, again, the meal and dining experience have been shown to make a big difference in the overall satisfaction of nursing home residents. Ideally, specific healthcare services should also be available for different patients' needs. For example, if the individual needs care, has dementia, you should choose a place with a specialty unit to care for dementia patients. If they need rehabilitation, it would be helpful to have a rehabilitation unit on site. So these are all the things that, you know your loved one better than anyone, and it's good to make a list of all that. But let's look a little bit at staffing. And Elliot was talking about the ratio. It's important to know the ratio of staffing. And we know that now we have a big issue regarding staffing. But the staffing members at a nursing home are going to be the ones that are ensuring your loved one's safety, and their attitude, their experience, their professionalism is extremely important. You should also ask plenty of questions and spend some time observing the staff before making a decision. I have to tell you. So while you're observed, you should look for staff who possesses skills, obviously in nursing and personal care, but also demonstrate a polite, warm, and respectful relationship between the staff and the resident. You can also see if the staff knocks on the resident's door before entering, being polite, if they call residents by their name. And sometimes if you do go visit, you can ask other family members if they wish to answer, what did they think about how the staff is dealing with the residents. So, there's other choices and independence. Moving to a nursing home, it's a scary experience for most individuals. They often feel like they want their freedom to make their own choices. While it's true that they cannot do many of the things they used to do, but some aspects of their lives can and should remain up to them for as long as they are mentally capable to do so. So this is something that should be considered during decision-making process. Choices like what side items they want to eat, for example. Is there a choice? Do they have a choice? Is it potatoes or rice? What activities they want to participate in? When they go to bed and wake up, what shows they can watch on TV. This helps residents to feel more comfortable and happy in a nursing home. So if the individual receiving care is still mentally healthy, the last place you want to put them in is a home where their every move is controlled by the staff and by the routine. It's not easy, but it's these are all the little things that in the end will make it so much better for the person that you're caring for. It takes a lot of time. I went through myself personally. I have to tell you, I'll share a little. My mother was placed in a nursing home and she stayed there exactly for 2 days. Even though I did my homework and I looked at everything, at the end of the day, she was mentally able to tell me that that's not for her and I had to have other choices. So it's so important to look into that. I do want to talk about red flags. You can find a nursing home with bad reputation for care by doing a little research online. So you can look up Medicare, medicare.gov. Now you'll get all that information, so you don't have to write it down. They offers a very helpful search tool that provides reports on different nursing homes based on zip codes. They rate these facilities on factors such as staffing violations, health inspection, and more. If the nursing home you're interested in isn't showing many stars, you should take a look at the home's full report. And that's part of your advocacy role as a caregiver. And it's so important to do that because you don't want to get into a situation where it's going to be miserable for them and you'll be so unhappy and complaining. So I did say an awful lot. And again, maybe it's time to just, if you have any questions, or if you yourself have gone through this experience and want to share some of the tips that you may have, we would welcome them.
Love for you to chime in here, folks. Press *6 up from the phone. I think those who are on Zoom have done it so many times, they know all the ways to get in. Lucy, I might add kind of as an aside,
Sure.
Medicare.gov actually developed, I think maybe 18 months ago, it's been a while, a beautiful caregiver site. So you can look for that too, scroll around for that in Medicare.gov. It's very nice. Well done.
They have great resources, as does the VA. The VA really is almost like a model that many organizations are trying to follow. And They were one of the first to have telephone-based caregiver support programs in the US.
Who would have thunk?
So,
Anybody?
oh, please go ahead, Evelyn.
No, I was just going to say, anybody? Nobody wants to talk to us today, but it's
That's
okay.
okay. I wanted to talk a little bit more about those red flags. Now, we talked a lot about staffing shortages. We talked more about that during our program last week. Now, I think it's really important to keep that in mind right now as you are doing your research and investigating your options and seeing how many beds are available at different facilities. Remember that this can change in a couple of months, and you may want to give a call back to those facilities that may not have been accepting new admissions right now. I'm going to talk a bit about the Ombudsman program. I think it's really important as part of our advocacy as caregivers is to do whatever we can to make sure that our loved ones are receiving adequate care, that they're occupied, that they're entertained. If staff is not available to be doing that right now, consider making care packets or visiting more frequently or doing something that your loved one will appreciate. Also, spending more time at the facility will give you a better view into how they're functioning. I mentioned earlier that I had a colleague who had to place her mom. I have another friend who recently had to do that. And she bought a big pack of canvases, artist canvases on Amazon, and some cheap paints and paintbrushes. And she goes and spends time with her mom and does art therapy. But what I thought was really cool was that she bought those command hanging strips that you can hang art on your walls and it doesn't mess up the walls. The facility allowed her to put up the art that her and her mom make together in her mom's room. And so she has a rotating gallery and she switches the artwork, frequently. And I thought that was just such a nice idea to brighten up the space in which her mom is living, but also even for the people working in the facility, it's a great idea to share with other people and other caregivers. I think it's really important that we remember that if you have any concerns, speak with staff and administration of a facility. Document your communications if you need to. Send a follow-up email stating it was so nice to speak with you on this date regarding this. That way, if anything escalates, you have a paper trail. I'm a big believer in having a paper trail. I shared the information here with a link for the Ombudsman program. Every facility should have publicly posted information on how to contact your local ombudsman who can help to investigate and mediate concerns in long-term care facilities. I want to I'm going to ask for some audience participation. What do you think is the annual salary of an ombudsman, given the role and responsibility that I just mentioned? Yes, Evelyn.
Zero.
In some cases, ombudsmen are salaried, but ombudsmen are also volunteer positions. I recently, this morning, got an email from the state of Florida asking me to volunteer as an ombudsman. And I, out of curiosity, looked at what the average salary is for an ombudsman in Florida. And I was shocked. It was $58,000 as of the end of September 2022.
Whoa.
Very, very expensive to live here in Florida. And you would think that an ombudsman is a position of significance if they're mediating complaints, if they are leveraging resources above nursing home administration, for example. It was very surprising to me, and it explains why there is such a shortage. In addition to nursing home care, there is a shortage of ombudsmen. And that is why state health departments are reaching out to folks like me to ask for volunteers. So that's another thing to consider. How accessible is your ombudsman? Evelyn, go ahead. I can see your.
Well, yeah, in some states like California, it's all volunteers. So,
Mhm.
it's pretty interesting, the diversity in the ombudsman program. But the other thing is, in terms of ombudsman, they're usually, the programs are really usually run through or contracted by the area agency on aging. And a lot of times when people have asked me about a local nursing home, I'll say, call the ombudsman. They know what's available right now.
That was going to be what I was just going to say.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
sir.
So the last thing I said is, how available is your local ombudsman? So you would know that if you reached out and tried to ask them that information that you just suggested, Evelyn, which is a great idea. I think it's also really, no, that's fine. Great minds think alike. Try to reach out and see if you can speak with a local ombudsman. It's good to make contacts and to have these people, in your old-fashioned Rolodex, so to speak. But if you do have a loved one in long-term care, please, please, please consider those staffing shortages that we've been talking about. Try to engage your loved one in activities that stimulate their cognition. These can include games, puzzles, reading. The same is true for exercise. I'm a big advocate for that. So even leg exercises, chair exercises, arm exercises that can be done seated. Encourage friends and family to visit so that it's not just one visitor that person sees all the time. And think about some projects like the arts and crafts one I was talking about. I thought that was such a nice idea. Another great tool is reminiscence therapy. That is a great type of cognitive stimulation, especially for people with Alzheimer's and related dementia. So bring over photo albums, create a scrapbook. You can get photos printed and give them a book and have them make it. Listening to music also is great reminiscence therapy. Same with eating traditional family meals from a coveted family recipe together, or telling stories like, do you remember when? So these can be some great things that you can do right now, given what we know of the current climate in nursing homes and the staffing shortages that are being experienced. As always, we share a number of resources. So you have some links here. The Elder Care Locator is an amazing resource I can't speak enough of, and also the longtermcare.gov website, and certainly the caregiver resources that medicare.gov has available too. So with that, I open it up to conversation, questions, last comments, please.
Well, before we move forward, I also want to mention it's a very good idea to connect with staff. Let them know who you are. Thank them. Occasionally, maybe bring a little treat. It's so important that they also feel that you're there for them too. And when you connect with the staff, they connect with the person that you're caring for. And I think staff, especially with this shortage, need a lot of encouragement and thanking them as well.
And that's a tough call because there's always 3 shifts, there was always,
Yeah.
they have assigned different rooms, so you have to go different times of the day, day to day. Yeah, you gotta really, but a box of candy at the nursing station with your name on it.
Exactly.
get you a long way.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Same with thank you cards,
Flowers. Yep.
Personal gestures and tokens. Just as I said, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think honey goes a long way.
Yes. Anybody have anything? We'd love to hear from you. Overwhelmed by all of your fabulous information, I'm sure.
It's an important topic.
Oh, yes.
Very.
You want to talk about your next topic?
Certainly. Next week, I hope that everyone will join us if you are available. We will be talking about alternatives to placement and different types of living situations. Since the pandemic, actually, I talked a bit earlier about millennials as an example. There has been a big shift of people moving back home with loved ones during the pandemic and realizing their loved ones aren't doing so great on their own. So we're going to be talking about what to do if placement is not an option, and how to sort of manage some difficult situations.
Great. Dondi, I saw that you had your phone open. Would you still like to talk to us?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I was kind of confused on the word ombudsman. What there is that a caregiver or what? Can you hear me?
Yes,
I didn't hear what the word was.
ombudsman.
Ombudsman,
Oh.
yeah.
Yes.
An ombudsman is a mediator or kind of like a patient and caregiver advocate. So if you're
Okay.
having an issue with a long-term care facility, a nursing home that is operated by the state, for example, or funded by the state, I should say,
Yes.
you can reach out to your local AAA or to find out who your local ombudsman is. But the facility where your loved one is should have that information clearly posted as well, so that you can easily get in touch with the ombudsman in your area.
Okay. All right. That was a new word to me, so I'm gonna have to use that one.
It's new for a lot of people. An ombudsman really is a mediator, and they are in that role free of charge for people. So rather than needing to reach out, let's say, to a lawyer or something, you could reach out to your ombudsman if you have an issue. And that's where my tip on documenting comes in handy. Any conversation, any interaction that you have with staff or with administration, send a follow-up email to the facility to say, thanks so much for speaking with me today for 15 minutes at 1 o'clock today about my mom, and thanks for explaining this, that, and the other. And that way you have just a record. It makes it much easier for an ombudsman or someone in that role to do their job.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Just to
Yes,
kind
sir.
of say that if there is an issue, I think, Elliot, it's the same in the States as well. They have to do a bit of an investigation, right?
That's
And
their
then
role.
come back and tell you what they found out and how to negotiate.
That's why it's important to have good evidence.
Yes.
Like that. Okay, folks, it's getting a little late here. I'm just gonna end this. I want you to know in several days, you'll be getting a post-session questionnaire. For those of you who are frequent listeners, you may have gotten a lot of those, but we really do appreciate it when you fill that out and when you let us know how you like the presentation and if there are any problems for you in accessing it, or how much you liked it. Just let us know. And if there's any topics that you want to hear in the future, let us know that too. Now, you're not going to get that post-session questionnaire that will include the slides and all of the information that was presented today, unless you're registered. If you need to register, if somebody gave you the phone number, just call WellMed Charitable Foundation Customer Service, 866-390-6491. You do need to write that one down, 866-390-6491. And you'll be so happy because then you'll get this fabulous monthly calendar. I usually read what's upcoming, and I'll tell you, we've got quite a bit left this month, even though we're more than halfway through it. So please get that calendar, see what you'd like to listen to. And with that, I'd just really like to thank all of our participants today. I'd like to thank our speakers who do such a fabulous job. They do a lot of background work, a lot of research, get all the new statistics for us, really keep us up to date on things. Thank you so much. And a great presentation too. You and your slides, Elliot. I'm so jealous. Anyway, and I also want to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation for sponsoring the Caregiver Teleconnection, for the podcasts that they have on their website. We'd love for you to go and take advantage of those. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and I thank you all so much for being part and with us today.
Thank you. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Be well.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. See you next week, I hope.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.